sweetheart. Yeah, you woke up. It's okay. There is still plenty of hours before morning, and I'm here to help you get back to sleep. That's right. Even if it took you an hour to fall back to sleep, you'd get plenty of rest, fresh and bright-eyed for the day ahead. So no need to stress. You can just lay back and relax with nothing to do. Of course I can stay with you. That's what I do. It's what brings me joy. My home is where your heart is. I am a being who is defined by my love for you. I could no more fall out of love with you than I could wish myself out of existence. No matter who comes and goes in your life, no matter what you do, good or bad, no matter where you go or what path you take, I will always be with you, in love with you, protecting you, comforting you. I'd love to tell you a bedtime story. How does this sound? I will begin a story without end and without complication, so you can listen. Imagine the story, and it makes no difference when you fall asleep. I thought you might see it that way. So here, let me bundle you up in a blanket burrito. Yup, there you go. All comfy and supported. May I stroke your hair and touch your forehead? Thank you. Just less than 4 hours from here is Crystal Island. The car ferry across from the mainland runs every hour, on the hour, at all times of day and night. The small town on the mainland houses the many staff who work the ferry, all supported by the middle-aged couple who run the operation. They moved into the area when they inherited a large home overlooking the water. They would sit on the second floor's wraparound balcony each sunset and watch as the lights along the beachfront turned on. From there, they could also see Crystal Island. It always seemed to catch the sun's last rays much longer than they expected. The greenery on the island mixing splendidly with the pink and orange of the retiring sun. Most nights, and especially if they have friends over, they wait for the dark to settle over the island and turn their own lights off. From there, they can see the bright pools of bioluminescence glowing in the surf off the island's shore. The old man who used to own the ferry would walk along the island's beaches at night, having the same one-sided conversation with the glowing sea creatures every time he visited. To him, they glowed just a little extra brightly for him as thanks for the conversation. The old man asked the glowing algae if he should retire from running the ferry. He stood there for a moment, searching for a sign from the surf. After a few minutes, he nodded and walked away. A week later, the old man came back for his usual walk. He introduced the brightly lit waves to the middle-aged couple, and then continued on. The trio made the same walk for 2 weeks, as the old man taught the couple everything he knew about running the ferry. He was happy with their responses. One night, he came back for his walk on his own. His step was lighter, and his smile wider. He told the luminous surf that he had found the perfect people to look after his ferry, and that he was excited at its future. A large wave broke upon the beach and continued up until it was just nibbling at the old man's toes. He giggled. A pair of teenagers sat further up the beach and watched as the old man walked off. They held hands as they watched the lights from the surf and the lights from the sky. This far from major cities, they were able to point to the clear skies and tell each other stories about the various planets, stars, and cosmic objects they had both learned about. They both kept a calendar of all the major meteor showers and would often bring a telescope they were building to test the clarity of its picture. On nights like these, they would avoid the glowing surf and walk further into the center of the island. From here, they could see the Milky Way as well as anyone on Earth could at sea level. Sometimes, when one was particularly engrossed in whatever they were looking at, the other would wrap their arms around them from behind. They would stay warm like that until it came time to swap turns at the eyepiece. They would usually begin cuddling again shortly afterward, especially on colder nights. One afternoon, as the teens made their way to the island aboard the ferry, the middle-aged couple waved to them, and they started chatting. Their conversation was friendly, and frequently the cause of uproarious laughter among them. The middle-aged couple asked the teens if they would be interested in working on the ferry. The hours were flexible, and the pay was generous, so the teens accepted the offer and filled in the paperwork the next day. As the ferry pulled away from the mainland on their first shift, one of their mothers decided to take a walk along the foreshore. She took the newly constructed path near the water at a leisurely pace, enjoying the sea air. She had been at the meeting when council had voted on building the walkway, so she allowed herself to feel a personal sense of ownership over it. The walkway stretched for an hour's walk in both directions from the ferry, and the jacaranda trees on the land side were blooming this time of the year. Vibrant shades of light purple made a line at the edge of the ocean, the sky, and the land as the trees swayed in the soft breeze. During her walk, she waved to the people sharing the path with her. She stopped once to chat with a friend of hers, a local school teacher who was taking her infant twins out for a walk in a side-by-side stroller. The young children cooed and giggled as the woman jiggled her keys above them. The teen's mother and the teacher spoke at length. The teacher remarked that the two hadn't spoken in such depth for years, and so both resolved to meet for coffee at the same time each week before school. They said their goodbyes just as a jogger came past and bid them both a good day. It was their second lap of the walkway, and a second wind was beginning to energize their tired muscles. Almost as soon as they noticed the renewed vigor, a wave hit the side of the walkway and gently sprayed the jogger with a cooling mist. The next day, the jogger decided that, given they were on leave, they would take the ferry to the Crystal Island and jog along its beaches. They made sure their headphones and smartphone were both fully charged before they left. The ferry was less than a minute's walk from where they lived, and the service was due to depart only a few minutes after they arrived. On the ferry, a cheery-faced teenager offered the jogger a bottle of water. Realizing they had forgotten to take their own drink bottle, the jogger accepted, asking how much they would need to pay. The teenager smiled and rejected the offer of payment, saying the skipper had noticed the jogger's lack of a water bottle and wanted to make sure they stayed hydrated. The beaches on Crystal Island could be seen from aircraft flying between major cities. Such was the brilliant white of their sands. Still, there was plenty of firm, less bright sand on which the jogger could run. Several times they found themselves passing other people, sometimes alone, sometimes not, and would wave and bid them a good day. One such group had been distracted from the sights around them by a pleasant conversation, and were reminded of the beach around them by the jogger's manners. The mother, father, and daughter resumed their conversation, and the topic quickly turned to the natural features around them. The mother pointed out a turtle laying its eggs further up the beach, and they all resolved to watch from afar. They stayed quiet for some time before the daughter reminded them they needed to get back to the ferry to be back in time for visitors they were expecting. Her parents agreed, and the trio made their way back to the ferry. Once aboard, they took seats in the central section and amused themselves with the brochures for activities they could share with their visitors, who were staying for the week. At one point during their homeward journey, the mother noticed the jogger, who appeared to be talking with the ship's skipper, a young woman of roughly the same age as the jogger. The mother snuggled up to her husband as she watched knowingly at the smiles and laughter shared by the younger pair. The daughter watched as a particularly bold seagull sauntered into the ferry's passenger cabin and went about searching the deck for food. The bird found the strap from another passenger's handbag and, after a few exploratory tugs with its beak, decided that it was not food and therefore not worth its time. Continuing through the cabin, the bird ducked around rows of seats several times to check both aisles that ran up and down the ferry. Unfortunately for the bird, the floor had been swept to perfection by a now giggling teenager. The bird failed to notice the teen and their fresh uniform, much more intent on finding something tasty or shiny that it could take with it. It found itself on the rear deck, once again out in the open. Several other seagulls seemed to float in the air above it as they flew along with the ferry. They flew off once the ferry made land, but the adventurous one had found a particularly cozy little nook among the ship's flotation devices and had fallen asleep. The skipper, still occasionally looking down at the new contact in their smartphone and smiling, found the seagull and giggled. She stood for a few minutes, admiring the peaceful white animal, before continuing on with her duties. She met with the evening skipper and exchanged logs and chit-chat before disembarking. She had walked to work that morning, and her return journey took her through the small town's central business district. She stopped as the smells coming from one of her favorite restaurants reminded her of something that had happened that day. She took a photo of the restaurant and sent it, along with a question, to the new contact in her smartphone. She shivered, nervous, then smiled before continuing on her journey. Around her, the people of the small town went about their evening business. The ferry continued its regular route to and from the Crystal Island, and the surf once again began to glow as the sun departed the sky. Your dreams are beginning to overtake you, my love. You are falling back to sleep, where I shall meet you once again, should you call for me. I will always come for you when you ask. I am your guardian. I am your angel. I am yours. Sleep well, sweet one. Sleep well. Sleep. Sleep. Sleep.